I have to sit here for hours and hours, days, weeks, before anything pops out that I feel is good enough to keep, that speaks to me.
Some artists chase fame. Benny Andersson chased feeling. For half a century, ABBA's music has sounded effortless, melodies that seem to exist outside of time. But behind that shimmer lies something more complex: control, discipline, and a man who treated pop like architecture. He once said that every chord has to earn its place. Now, decades later, Andersson is peeling back the polish. The truth about ABBA isn't glitter or gossip. It's patience, perfectionism, and the quiet cost of harmony.
It's just that I trust my senses. I trust what I feel and what I hear. Has always been like that for 50 years.
This is the story Benny Andersson finally tells, the one behind the smiles, the sequins, and the songs that refuse to die. The workshop inside ABBA's studio obsession. In the heart of Stockholm's Polar Studios, Benny Andersson treated every song like a blueprint. Each take, each chord, each echo was shaped with mathematical precision. What sounded effortless to the world was, in truth, built from relentless patience. Here, music wasn't magic. It was engineering made emotional. The studio didn't feel like a glamorous hit factory. It felt like a laboratory of devotion. Cables curled across the floor like veins feeding a living machine. Andersson sat behind the piano, searching for that single imperceptible shift that could turn a pleasant melody into something eternal. When others heard a finished mix, he heard space to refine. "If a song isn't breathing yet," he once said, "then it isn't alive." Engineers learned to read his silences. The long pauses before a quiet nod meant another layer was coming, another harmony to record, another night that would stretch until dawn. Björn Ulvaeus once joked that they worked until the sun apologized for rising. The sessions were intense, but strangely peaceful. Andersson's discipline wasn't tyranny. It was faith in the process. Inside those walls, the tiniest details became gospel. A single tambourine shake could shift an entire mood. A misaligned harmony could unravel the emotional balance of a verse. Andersson would loop a section for hours, closing his eyes until intuition caught the mistake. "Every note has to earn its place," he said years later. That philosophy created songs that sounded inevitable, melodies so clean they seemed predestined. But perfection had its cost. Days blurred into weeks, laughter thinned into focus. The world outside grew louder, but Andersson stayed anchored to the piano, trusting that precision could reveal emotion rather than suffocate it. By the time Dancing Queen or The Winner Takes It All left the studio, they carried not just melody but architecture, scaffolds of feeling built by someone who believed music could be measured, carved, and made timeless. Benny Andersson didn't simply produce hits, he engineered permanence, the conflict behind pop perfection. ABBA's joyful sound disguised deep fractures beneath the melody. As fame grew, personal lives unraveled, and the studio became both refuge and battleground. Benny, Andersson's pursuit of perfect sound collided with the raw realities of love and loss, turning private heartbreak into anthems the entire world could feel. For audiences, ABBA shimmered with glitter and light, but behind the mirrored stage walls, tension hung in the air like feedback. The band wasn't just navigating fame, they were living inside its echo chamber. Benny and Frida's marriage began to strain under the weight of constant touring and scrutiny. At the same time, Björn and Agnetha's relationship was fracturing. The harmonies that sounded seamless on record were sometimes recorded in separate rooms. Andersson later reflected, "We were singing together about things we couldn't say to each other." That song, though credited to Björn and Benny, became a mirror of the band's unraveling. Andersson's melodies carried emotion that words couldn't tame, grief disguised as beauty. Each chord progression was a form of negotiation, a search for peace through structure. The studio became therapy and confession at once. Engineers remembered sessions that shifted between laughter and silence, the kind of quiet that said everything no lyric could. As the world danced to Voulez-vous and Knowing Me, Knowing You, Andersson kept refining the contrast. Joy on the surface, melancholy underneath. He understood that emotion wasn't a performance, it was architecture. He once said, "You can't fake feeling. The song always knows if you're lying." It was that honesty that made ABBA's music endure long after the band itself fractured. Beneath the sequins and disco beats, they documented the slow unraveling of human connection, how love fades but melody remembers. Andersson didn't just compose, he translated heartbreak into balance, turning sorrow into something melodic enough to outlast pain. Each song was a truce, each harmony a scar disguised as art. When The Winner Takes It All finally reached the top of the charts, Andersson didn't celebrate. He listened quietly, aware that perfection had come at a cost. The world heard triumph. He heard closure. The silence after the curtain fell. When ABBA faded without farewell, Benny Andersson retreated from spotlight into solitude. Away from the noise, he rediscovered melody as meditation. Fragments hummed on quiet walks, sketches that later became new compositions. Silence became his instrument, shaping a second life where sound and stillness finally shared the same rhythm. The end of ABBA wasn't explosive. It was gradual, like a curtain closing in slow motion. There were no public feuds, no final press conference, just a quiet dispersal. The world waited for a reunion that never came. Benny withdrew into anonymity, composing at his own pace, content to let the world move without him. "It wasn't about leaving," he once said. "It was about listening again." In the silence that followed, Andersson began to rebuild from memory. He would wake before dawn, sit at his piano, and let the first notes of the day decide where they wanted to go. Without charts or deadlines, the music began to sound different, slower, more patient, more human. These quiet sessions formed the seeds of his next chapters. Chess, Christina from Duvemola, and the pieces later collected in piano. Solitude didn't erase the perfectionist, it refined him. Working alone, he no longer needed approval or applause. He traded the roar of arenas for the small satisfaction of a chord resolving exactly right. "When you stop chasing applause, you start hearing yourself again," he reflected years later, a line that captured the calm that replaced chaos. The silence became a partner, not a void. It gave him space to reimagine what music meant, not spectacle, not escape, but continuity. Every note became a conversation with his younger self, a reminder that stillness doesn't mean absence, it means understanding. When fans finally heard his solo work decades later, they recognized the same fingerprint that once built ABBA: balance, clarity, and reverence for melody. The difference was tone, softer, slower, but no less complete. The world had moved on, but Benny Andersson had found something deeper than applause: peace in the sound that remained after everything else stopped, the return of legacy and reinvention. Decades later, Benny Andersson reimagined ABBA for a new world. Through technology and memory, he resurrected performance itself, not as nostalgia, but as precision reborn. Voyage wasn't a comeback, it was proof that invention could preserve humanity, that the future of music still carried echoes of a hand-built past. When the world first heard that ABBA would perform again, it sounded impossible. But Andersson had never been interested in simple reunions. What he envisioned was closer to a symphony of light, a way to make time itself an instrument. The Voyage project fused motion capture technology with live orchestration, every digital gesture crafted from months of rehearsals. He explained, "It's not pretending to be us. It is us, preserved in another form." In that statement lay the essence of Andersson's belief. Authenticity doesn't mean stagnation. For him, art only survives when it learns to evolve without losing its truth. The avatars weren't gimmicks, they were memories sculpted into movement. Every flicker of light on that digital stage was built from motion data captured by the band themselves, a literal embodiment of the years they had lived and the music they had carried. Audiences around the world were stunned. The illusion felt alive, precise and strangely emotional. Andersson watched quietly from the control booth, not as a returning star, but as an engineer conducting the past. He later reflected, "You can't compete with your younger self, but you can honor them." The project blurred boundaries between live and recorded, between memory and present. For Andersson, that tension was the point. He had always been fascinated by how technology could hold feeling without erasing the human touch. Voyage wasn't ABBA's rebirth, it was their echo carried forward through circuitry, a reminder that emotion doesn't age even when faces do. In the end, Benny Andersson didn't return to chase applause. He returned to finish an idea, that precision, empathy, and melody could transcend form. The future he built wasn't synthetic, it was eternal. The truth Benny Andersson exposed. When Benny Andersson finally spoke of ABBA's endurance, he dismissed fame and focused on structure. For him, melody was integrity, the belief that feeling, shaped with care, can survive time. His revelation was simple yet rare. The secret of ABBA wasn't glamour or luck. It was sincerity engineered to last. For decades, the world searched for ABBA's formula. Was it the harmonies, the hooks, the production? Andersson smiled at the question because he knew there was never a formula, only discipline. Behind every global hit was the quiet conviction that emotion should sound effortless, but never accidental. "We didn't chase perfection," he once said. "We chased truth." He believed that music was architecture for feeling, not a fleeting expression, but a structure that could hold memory. Every progression had weight, every melody a direction. Andersson viewed songs not as products, but as companions for the listener's life. They weren't meant to impress, they were meant to stay. That restraint defined ABBA's work and explains why their songs still sound new decades later. He often spoke about honesty as the hardest craft in pop. "You can make something loud," he said, "but making something genuine, that takes years." His calm confidence stood in contrast to the chaos of modern fame. Where others chased algorithms, Andersson trusted the ancient simplicity of melody. It was his rebellion, quiet but absolute. He understood that trends decay, but emotional precision doesn't. And in a culture obsessed with reinvention, his refusal to chase novelty became radical. To Benny, ABBA's legacy wasn't about their rise, but their endurance. Their music lived on because it was honest, built on care and craft rather than calculation. He proved that sincerity could be engineered, not manufactured, but constructed deliberately, with faith that what is real will resonate forever. That is the truth Benny Andersson exposed. Greatness doesn't come from chasing immortality. It comes from building something that doesn't need to, something that already lives in the listener's heart. Benny Andersson never sought stardom. He sought endurance, a kind of musical truth that could outlive its moment. ABBA's melodies still breathe because they were built with empathy, not ego. Every chorus, every chord progression was shaped by a man who believed structure could hold emotion without caging it. In his world, melody wasn't entertainment, it was memory, captured and preserved like light through glass. Decades later, his lessons still hum beneath the surface of modern pop. That honesty lasts longer than hype, and precision can feel like love when wielded with care. Andersson didn't just write songs, he engineered a language for feeling, one the world still speaks. Which ABBA song still speaks to you? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories behind the sound. Because true music doesn't fade, it simply waits to be heard again.